It's the darndest thing, but the other day I was sitting out on the porch, the one with the chipped white rylin and the hummingbird feeder that never stays full long enough, and the breeze carried in the smell of baked apples. Not the sweet, cinnamon-heavy kind you get at the grocery store these days, no. This was real, like the kind my mama used to make, or who I thought was my mama. Lord have mercy. That smell just hit me square in the chest. Took me right back to the fall of 1961. The trees were gold and rust, and I was just a girl in a hand-me-down dress with patch knees and big questions I didn't know I was even allowed to ask. Funny, isn't it? How a smell, just a smell, can unearth a whole life you thought you'd buried deep, wrapped up in silence and Sunday manners. Back in my day, we didn't talk much about feelings, not the big ones. You just carried 'em like laundry baskets too full, hoping nothing falls out on the way to the line. But that morning, sitting there with my tea going cold and the birds fighting over sugar water, I felt it bubble up again. That ache, that memory, that question I never got to ask out loud until it was almost too late. I reckon I've told pieces of this story to a few folks over the years, in bits and pieces, like quilt scraps no one ever stitched together. But lately I've been wondering if it's time to say it plain. You see, all my life, I thought I was the youngest of 5. Just little Ruthie, the baby girl of Henry and Louise Simmons, the one who never quite fit but never knew why. And then there was Lillian, my oldest sister, tall as a flagpole, quiet as a prayer. Always watching, always there. I remember she had these long fingers that could braid hair like it was silk, and when I had the fever once, she stayed up all night with a wet cloth and whispered hymns in my ear. She wasn't like the others. She was different. And deep down, in that secret place where kids keep their questions, I always wondered why she looked at me like she was both scared and proud. Like I was breakable or precious. Now, I ain't gonna spill all the beans just yet. We've got time, don't we? But let me tell you this. There comes a moment, sometimes when you're old and gray and sittin' in a creaky chair with your bones atchin', when the truth don't knock politely anymore. It just walks right in. And mine came in a cardboard box after a funeral. Ain't that something? After all those years, all the holidays, the photos, the birthdays, the secrets, and there it was, plain as day. A name on a page that changed everything I thought I knew about who I was. But that's gettin' ahead of myself. What I'm fixin' to tell you ain't just a family story. It's a hard story. One of those quiet ones that lives behind your ribs for decades. It's about shame and sacrifice, about the way love sometimes wears a disguise so heavy you don't even recognize it till it's gone. And maybe, just maybe, it's a story you need to hear. Because Lord knows families can hold more than love. They hold silence too. And that silence, sometimes it hollers louder than words. So, if you'll sit with me a while, just like you would on a Sunday afternoon with peach tea and nothing urgent to do, I'll tell it to you straight. The whole truth. Even the parts that still catch in my throat. Now tell me this. If you found out your whole life was built on one big, well-meaning lie, would you want to know the truth? Or would you keep sleeping peaceful, never knowing who really tucked you in at night? Back in those days, Morganton was quieter, a slow town stitched together by dirt roads, front porches, and the smell of fried okra on a Sunday afternoon. We didn't have much, Lord knows, but we had each other. Folks nowadays talk about childhood like it's supposed to be perfect, but ours was just plain and real. I grew up in a little clapboard house with creaky steps and a front yard that turned to mud every time it rained. Mama, well, Louise, I called her Mama back then. She kept the place spotless, even with 5 kids and no help. Daddy Henry was a hard man, not much for talkin', but he worked those fields like his life depended on it. And maybe it did. I was the baby, little Ruthie. The one everybody said was full of questions and always barefoot. I didn't mind dirt on my toes, meant I'd been running through the cornrows, pretending I was a queen of some secret land. My world was made of pine trees and hens, wildflowers and whispers I wasn't supposed to hear. The kind of world where you knew everybody's name and what pie they brought to the church potluck last spring. We didn't have toys from a store. We had tin cans and twine and imaginations big enough to turn a barn loft into a palace. I had one good dress for church, pale yellow, with a ribbon that never stayed tied, and a pair of shoes that got passed down so many times I reckon they were more patch than leather by the time I got them. But I didn't feel poor. Not really. We made do with what we had, and somehow it was enough. My sisters, or who I thought were my sisters, were all older, all busy with chores and boys and dreams bigger than that little house. But Lillian, she was different. She was 16 years older than me, already near grown by the time I came along. Tall and quiet, with those solemn blue eyes that seemed to carry the weight of something she never talked about. She wasn't like the others. I used to think of her like a shadow that stayed close even when the sun moved. She brushed my hair more gently than Mama ever did, taught me to sew, stayed up with me when I had nightmares, even after she moved into the back room. I used to sit by the window and watch her hang laundry, wondering why she never laughed the way the other girls did. But I didn't ask. You didn't ask questions in our house, not about feelings, not about history. That was just the way things were back then. At night, I'd lay in bed staring at the cracked ceiling, thinking big thoughts for a little girl. I believed kindness was everything, that good people didn't leave, that families told each other the truth. And I believed, with my whole heart, that I was exactly who they said I was. I didn't know there were stories buried deeper than our root cellar, hidden behind glances and locked drawers and things children didn't need to know. You know, there's a kind of innocence that feels like a warm quilt, soft and safe, and you never want to pull it back. But eventually, life does the pull-in for you. And years later, when the truth finally rose up from where they tucked it away, I realized something even back then, in that quiet little house. I had felt the crack, just didn't have the words for it. Still, I dreamed. I dreamed of growing up and getting married, of having a porch swing of my own, with babies in the yard and a man who'd come home whistling. I thought my family was whole. I thought I knew where I came from. I thought I was just Ruth. But the thing about the past is, it don't stay quiet forever. I was 12 the first time I felt it, that strange little flicker in your chest that tells you something ain't quite right, but you don't know what or why, or whether you should even be feeling it. It was a Thursday. I remember that because Mama always boiled clothes on Thursdays, and the steam would fog up the whole kitchen like we were living inside a cloud. I was sitting on the back steps, peeling beans into a dented tin bowl, when I heard Miss Clara next door loud as ever, voice like a goose in a bonnet chatting with Mama on the porch. Now, Miss Clara was the kind of woman who knew everything about everybody before the rooster even crowed. Had one of those noses that twitched when she was about to say something juicy. And that day, Lord help me, I heard her say something I wasn't meant to hear. She's the spittin' image of Lil, isn't she? I swear, Louise, it's like she gave birth to that child herself. There was a pause, long and quiet. Then I heard the scrape of a rocking chair, and Mama, calm as ever, said, "That's enough, Clara." And that was that. No hollerin', no denial, just enough. But in that tiny pause, in that stillness between one word and the next, something inside me cracked open. I couldn't explain it, not then, but my heart beat faster and my hands went still in the bowl of beans, and I remember thinking, why would she say that? And why didn't Mama argue? I didn't ask nobody, not a soul, not even Lillian, especially not Lillian. But after that, I started watching her different. Not like a little sister looks at her big sister, but like a puzzle I'd never noticed was missing pieces. She moved different, talked different, always so gentle with me, more than she was with the others. She never raised her voice, never turned me away, even when I was being a little pill. And she had this way of looking at me when she thought I wasn't looking, like she was trying to memorize me. Like she loved me in a way that didn't quite fit the label sister. But I didn't know how to name any of that back then. I was just a girl who liked hopscotch and butterscotch candy and believing what I was told. And I was told she was my sister. So I stuffed that overheard moment deep down, like you'd stuff a note in a drawer you're too scared to open. Still, it stayed with me. And right round that time, Lillian started disappearing in the evenings. Said she was going to help at the church or help a friend, or sometimes she didn't say nothing at all. Mama never questioned it, just tightened her lips and went back to her biscuits. But I saw the look in her eyes, like she was holding something heavy. And then one night I snuck out, followed Lillian right through the trees behind our house, quiet as a mouse. She walked all the way to the old barn near the creek. I stayed back watching, and I'll never forget what I saw. She was crying, just standing there, hands pressed against the wood, sobbing like her whole soul was coming out her chest. I didn't go to her. I was too scared, but I never forgot it. I didn't know what it meant back then, but now I look back and I think that was the night her pain leaked through the cracks. That was the night I saw, for the first time, that love ain't always loud. Sometimes it hides. Sometimes it bleeds quiet in the dark. And maybe, deep down, I already knew. There came a time, not long after that night by the barn, when everything in our house started to feel different, heavier, like the walls were listening, like the air itself was trying to keep a secret. I was 13 then, still wearing hand-me-down skirts that didn't quite fit, and still trying to make sense of the way folks looked at me sometimes like they knew something I didn't. It started when Daddy got sick. Wasn't anything dramatic, just a cough at first. But it hung on through the spring, got deeper, rattlier, like it was coming from some place no doctor could reach. And Daddy, being the proud man he was, refused to see anybody till it was too late. We didn't say the word cancer back then. Folks just whispered, "He's not well," and started bringing over pies and covered dishes and sitting real quiet in our living room. Lillian came home more often then. She'd been spending nights with a friend in town, but now she was back every day, helping Mama, taking care of Daddy, and fussing over me more than usual. She even made me a new dress, sky blue with a little lace collar, said I'd outgrown all the others. I should have been grateful, and I was, but I also felt ashamed, like I didn't deserve it, like her kindness had some weight I couldn't quite carry. And all the while, that thing I overheard, that line Miss Clara said, kept echoing in the back of my mind. I started wondering more, watching harder. I saw the way Mama avoided my eyes sometimes, how her mouth would twitch like she was holding back more than just her words. I saw how Lillian's hands would tremble whenever Daddy had a bad spell, and how she'd linger by my bedroom door at night, just watching me sleep. Then came the worst part. One afternoon, after Daddy taken a turn for the worse, Mama sent me to town for flour. Said she was gonna bake bread to keep her hands busy. On the way back, I passed by the church, and there was Miss Clara, talking with another lady under that big oak tree. They didn't see me at first. "I don't know how that child don't see it," Clara said, arms crossed like she was reading a eulogy off the wind. "She's got Lillian's chin, Lillian's walk. Henry may be dying, but it's his shame that's taking the longest to bury." I froze. My heart felt like it stopped mid-beat. They caught sight of me then, and their mouths clamped shut tighter than a mason jar lid. I walked past without saying a word, but inside, I was shaken. And for the first time, I felt it clear as day, that fear. Not just suspicion, not just curiosity fear. The kind that sinks into your belly and won't let go. I got home, handed Mama the flower and went straight to the shed. Cried like I hadn't cried in years. I wanted to scream, to ask, to know, but I was too scared of what I'd hear. What if it was true? What if I'd been living a lie, a whole life built on pretend? And still, I didn't say a word. Not to Mama, not to Lillian, not even to God that night when I knelt beside my bed. I just sat there swallowing my questions like bitter medicine, pretending it was all in my head. I think part of me hoped someone would come to me, would sit me down, tell me everything, and say it with love. But no one did. They just kept going, one day into the next, acting like nothing was wrong. And I kept going too, but now I carried something heavy inside me. A girl with questions she wasn't allowed to ask. And a heart slowly learning that the truth don't always come with comfort. I remember the way the light looked that morning. Soft, gold, like the Lord had taken a brush and painted everything in slow motion. The air was still, heavy, like even the birds knew not to sing. I was 70 years old that day, a grown woman with children, grandchildren, gray in my hair and laugh lines so deep they could tell stories of their own. But in that moment, when I opened that box under Lillian's bed, I felt 12 again. Small, confused, and utterly unprepared. It was just a plain cardboard box, taped at the corners, dusty. I was helping clean out her things after the funeral. She'd left me a note saying I could take her Bible, the one with the leather worn soft from years of holding grief. Said she wanted me to have it. For comfort, she wrote. Comfort. Land sakes alive. I had no idea. I opened it careful, like you'd open something sacred. And there it was, that old Bible, still smelling faintly of lavender and thyme. The pages fluttered a little in the breeze from the open window, and one slipped loose. A folded piece of paper, yellowed, thin, delicate as a moth's wing. I unfolded it, not thinking much, just curiously flipping through her bookmarks. And then, I saw it. Name of child, Ruth Ellen Simmons. Mother, Lillian May Simmons. Father, left blank. I didn't breathe. I couldn't. I just sat there, knees on the hardwood, hands shaken like I'd touched fire. My whole life, all those Sundays, all those family dinners, all the times I called her sister with a smile, and she answered with eyes full of something I never could name. They all came flooding back like a river that had finally burst its dam. I remember looking up at the clock on the wall. It had stopped, just like that. The second hand, stuck between the tick and the talk, hanging there like the whole world had taken a breath and didn't know what to do next. And neither did I. Then I saw the photo, tucked between the pages of Psalms. A faded photograph, Lillian, maybe 17, sitting in the backyard behind our old house. Hair pulled back with a scarf, eyes tired but proud. And in her arms a baby with round cheeks and a swirl of dark hair. On the back, in her handwriting, my Ruthie, forgive me. I held that photo to my chest and rocked, not even knowing I was crying. It wasn't loud, not the way I cried as a girl. It was quiet, deep, a kind of cry that comes from the marrow, the kind you don't even have words for. I felt grief, yes, but also shame, and rage, and love, all twisted together like wild vines. I wanted to run back in time and ask her, beg her, why? Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me go through life not knowing where I came from? But I also knew the answer. She was a child herself when she had me. And back then, girls like her didn't get second chances. They got silence. They got told to hush, to hide. And so she did. And I was the secret. That moment broke something open in me. Not just sadness, but a truth I could finally hold in my hands. And in that truth, there was a strange, aching kind of peace. Because she did love me. She just never got to say it the way she wanted. And I finally saw it for what it was. Not betrayal, not weakness, but sacrifice. After that day, the world didn't end. I remember sitting there on that bedroom floor, holding that photo to my chest, waiting for the sky to crack open or the wind to scream or something. But it didn't. The sun kept pouring through the window like nothing had changed, and the birds kept singing like fools on the branch outside. But inside me, everything had shifted, quietly, irrevocably, like someone had taken the center of me and rearranged it without a skin. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I just sat, still, numb. The days that followed were hushed. I went about my chores like always, made tea, folded sheets, wrote checks, watered the garden, but I felt like I was floating just outside of myself. You ever been in a room full of people and still felt like you were behind glass? That was me. My grandkids came by, bringing flowers and sweet potato pie, and I smiled, kissed their heads. But deep down, I was still sitting on that bedroom floor, staring at a truth that wouldn't let me go. I didn't tell nobody. Not at first. Not my son. Not the ladies at church. Not even my journal. It felt too big, too raw. Like speaking it out loud would tear it open all over again. And besides, how do you explain something like that? How do you say, my sister was my mama, without feeling like a stranger in your own skin? For a while, I pulled away from folks. Stopped going to the Wednesday night socials. Let the choir sing without me. Even stopped sitting on the front pew where I used to clutch my little cross necklace like it could hold me together. I'd lost something. Not just a person, but a version of my life. A version of me. And I didn't know how to get her back. I'd always believed in certain things, you know. In order. In truth. In the way love should look. I believed people told their children the truth, and that pain could be prayed through, and that the past was a place you could visit without it burning your fingers. But now, I wasn't so sure. There was an ache I carried those weeks. Not loud, not sharp, just a low hum, like a song with no words. I'd sit out on the porch some evenings, tea growing cold in my hands, and watch the light change over the lake. That water knew things. I swear it did. It just shimmered quiet, reflecting whatever you brought to it. And I brought silence, questions, regret. But even in that stillness, something started to shift. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. Not at Lillian. I understood her in a way I never had. Understood how much she gave up. How she must have cried herself to sleep the night they made her hand me over to Mama. How every time she brushed my hair or tucked me in or patched a hole in my dress, it must have split her heart clean in two. I don't know if I'd have had that kind of strength to love like that, quiet, hidden, lifelong. There's a grief in that kind of love, a grief that don't shout, just settles in your bones and hums. So I didn't fall apart. Not really. But I didn't stay the same either. I became softer, quieter, more careful with the stories we tell our children and the ones we keep to ourselves. I stopped expecting life to make sense, and I started listening for the things that don't need explaining. And slowly, day by day, I began to carry her with me. Not as a sister, not even just as a mother, but as a woman who walked through fire and never let me feel the burn. It's funny how life has a way of nudging you forward, even when you think you've gone still for good. I wasn't looking for any grand sign, mind you. I was just trying to make it through the days without feeling like I was missing a part of myself. After Lillian's truth came out, I thought maybe I'd just live quiet from then on, knit my little blankets, feed the birds, watch the grandbabies grow, and let the world spin without me needing to chase it. But then came Grace. Not the kind you pray for, though Lord knows I was doing plenty of that. No, I mean Grace, my great-granddaughter. 5 years old, all curls and questions and a pair of eyes that could melt stone. She came running into my room one Sunday afternoon, holding a crayon drawing with both hands like it was a treasure map. "This is you and your sister," she said, proud as can be, and pointed to 2 stick figures, one with gray hair and a cane, the other with a big heart drawn on her chest. I smiled, of course, and thanked her. But then I looked again. "That one," she said, pointing to the figure with the heart, "that's your sister who's in heaven now. Mama says she loved you so much." I just sat there holding that paper like it was made of glass. Something about the way she said it, so sure, so gentle, like the truth was never meant to hurt, only to heal. And that's when it hit me. Maybe it's not too late to tell this story. Not just for me, but for her. For all of them. See, I'd spent so many years not knowing. And then more years pretending I didn't want to. But there, in that little drawing, was something else, a new way to see it. Not as shame. Not as betrayal. But as love. Complicated, yes. Imperfect, sure. But real. So I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I took out that old photo of Lillian and me. The one I found in her Bible. And I framed it. Put it right up on the mantle beside the rest of the family. Not hidden. Not tucked away. Not whispered about like a ghost. And when folks came by, I told em the truth, plain as day. That Lillian wasn't just my sister. She was my mother. And she loved me in the only way she was allowed to, quietly, fiercely, always. At first, I worried what people might say. You know how small towns can be. But you'd be surprised, most folks just nodded, real soft-like, and said things like, "Lord, I always wondered," or "She sure did adore you." And that was that. No judgment, just understanding. Then I started writing it down. Not for a book or anything fancy. Just for me. And maybe for Grace, when she's old enough. A little stack of pages, tied with string, sitting in my drawer. It felt good to let it out. Like exhaling after holding your breath for 70 years. And I started going back to church again. Sat in the back pew the first Sunday, real quiet, just listening. And I cried, not because I was sad, but because I wasn't. Not anymore. That ache had started to ease its grip. I won't say I became a brand new woman overnight. That's not how it works when you've lived through this much life. But I found a little light again. A little strength. And maybe even a little joy. Sometimes, a second chance don't come loud or flashy. Sometimes it walks in with crayons and stick figures and a child's voice saying, "She loved you so much." And somehow, that's enough to start over. It took me 71 years to say it out loud, not just in my head, not whispered into my pillow or prayed into the dark, but real. Solid, with my feet on the ground and my heart wide open. I stood up by the lake behind the care home, the same place I sit with my tea most evenings, watching the herons glide low over the water. And I said it clear as a bell. "I forgive you, Mama." It surprised me, that word. Mama. I'd never called her that before. Not even once. Not when she was alive. Not when she was brushing the tangles from my hair or holding my hand through my fever or weeping in the barn with her arms wrapped round herself like she might split in two. I always called her Lil, like they told me to. Like we all agreed we would. But that day, standing by the lake with her photo in my hand and the sky tinted gold behind the hills, I said it straight. Mama. and it cracked something loose in me. Lord, I cried. I cried like I hadn't let myself cry in decades. Not out of sorrow, not anymore, but out of release. Like every knot inside me came undone all at once. It was like opening a window in a room that had been sealed shut for too long, and the breeze came in. Clean, light, forgiven. You see, I used to think if I ever said it, if I ever named her what she truly was, it would somehow betray the woman who raised me. Louise. My mother, by title, by effort, by duty. And she was good to me. Stern, yes, but steady. She gave me shelter, food, her name. But Lillian gave me life. And a love so quiet it took me most of mine to hear it. That day, I made a choice. Not the kind folks talk about in church sermons or newspaper stories. Just a simple, personal decision to stop living like a secret. To stop carrying the weight of someone else's shame. Because it wasn't mine to carry. Never was. I went back home that afternoon and pulled out the box I'd kept tucked under my bed. The one with the letter, the birth certificate, the photograph. And I took them to the fireplace. Not out of anger, not to erase, but to let go. I saved the photo, her holding me with that crooked little smile, but the rest, I burned. Watched the paper curl and blacken and drift up into the flue like prayers that didn't need speaking anymore. I whispered thank you through tears. Thank you for protecting me. For choosing love even when it meant silence. For doing the best she could in a world that gave her no choices. And then, I exhaled. I didn't move towns or change my name. I didn't write letters to distant cousins or try to rewrite the past. I just decided to live different, lighter, more open. I started answering questions my grandbabies had about our family with honesty. I started telling the whole story, not the polished, pretty one, but the true one. Because the truth, even when it's hard, is the only thing that makes love real. And I stopped looking back with regret. I still sit on my porch most evenings. Still drink my tea, still hum old hymns when the sun sets just right. But something in me shifted. I ain't haunted no more. I ain't angry. And I ain't ashamed. I chose to live forward. No more pretending. No more wondering. Just peace. You know, the older I get, the more I realize life ain't about getting all the answers. It's about learning to live with the ones you do have and making peace with the ones you never will. I spent a lot of years carrying questions. Some were loud, some quiet, some I didn't even know I was askin till the day I found the answers staring back at me from a folded piece of paper. But here's the thing I learned. Truth don't always come wrapped in comfort. Sometimes it stings. Sometimes it hollows you out before it fills you up again. But it does free you, not all at once, but inch by inch, like sunrise through a dusty window. What I know now, what I carry in these old bones and soft hands, is that love don't always show up the way we expect. Sometimes it's loud, with balloons and birthdays and big gestures. But more often, it's quiet. It's sitting beside you when you're sick. It's hemming your dress when no one's looking. It's talking a secret to the grave just to keep you safe. That's the kind of love I had. And I didn't see it for what it was till it was too late to say thank you. I look back now and I don't feel angry. Not anymore. Just grateful. Grateful for the years I did get. For the lessons hidden inside the silence. For the chance, even late in life, to see my mother clearly. Not as perfect. Not as broken. Just human. And Lord have mercy, that's all any of us are, isn't it? See, back in my day, we were taught to endure. To hush. To hide what hurt us and smile through what cracked us open. But if there's one thing I could whisper into the ear of every young woman out there, every daughter, mother, sister, it'd be this. You don't have to carry what don't belong to you. You're allowed to ask. You're allowed to hurt. And you are allowed to know the truth, even if it comes late, even if it changes everything. I used to think I had time to fix things, to ask the right questions, to make sense of it all. But time doesn't wait for us to be ready. It moves like a river, taking things with it. And sometimes, what's left behind is all we get. So we better learn to sit with it, hold it close, and listen to what it's still trying to tell us. I don't pretend to have all the wisdom in the world, but I'll tell you what I've come to believe. There's a kind of strength in forgiveness. Not just forgiving others, but forgiving yourself. For not knowing, for not asking, for believing what you were told because it was easier than digging. And maybe, just maybe, that's the only real freedom we get, to let go of the weight we were never meant to carry in the first place. So, if you're out there listening and there's a truth you've been running from, a question you're afraid to ask, a hurt you've buried so deep you've forgotten it still bleeds, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to open that drawer, to make the phone call, to look that photo in the eye and say, I see you now. Because life ain't waiting, and neither should you. Maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop waiting for someone else to tell you who you are, and start telling yourself the truth. Well, if you've stayed with me this long, bless your heart. I reckon it means something, and my story stirred something in yours. And I thank you for sitting with me like old friends on a porch swing, sharing more than just time. I never thought I'd tell this story out loud. Never thought these old lips would form the words, Lillian was my mother. But here we are, and you listened. So now, I want to ask you something real gentle, the way I'd ask one of my grandbabies when their eyes get cloudy with wondering. What truth have you been carrying, and who are you waiting to tell it to? See, this story ain't just about the past. It's about right now. It's about the choices we make every day to either live open or live guarded, to speak or to stay silent, to carry love out in the open or to bury it deep and hope it blooms underground. I lived a long time believing some things were better left unsaid, but I know better now. The words we don't speak, they stay inside us, knocking, waiting, growing heavy, and one day, they'll come out, one way or another. Might as well let 'em come with grace. I think about Lillian sometimes. Still do. I picture her on the porch with that faraway look she always had, humming a tune I didn't know but somehow recognized in my bones. I wonder what it cost her, carrying a love she wasn't allowed to name. I wonder if she ever thought I'd figure it out, or if she prayed I never would. And yet, even now, even with all I know, I can still feel her arms round me when I was sick. I can still hear her whisper my name like a lullaby. There was love there, quiet but strong, and I think, maybe that's what this whole story's really about. Not secrets, not shame, but love, the kind that survives things, the kind that waits, the kind that doesn't always look like we expect it to. So now I turn to you, sweet thing, you with the tired eyes and the quiet questions. Let me ask you plain. Is there someone you need to forgive, maybe even yourself? Is there a truth you've been too scared to touch, but it keeps tapping at your soul? And if you knew today was the last chance you'd get to speak it, what would you say? I ain't here to tell you what to do. That's not my place. But I will tell you this. The hardest stories to tell are usually the ones that set us free. And freedom, real freedom, don't come from forgetting. It comes from facing, from speaking, from loving what was broken and saying, even still, I choose to keep going. You've got time. Maybe not forever, but enough. Enough to say what needs saying. Enough to put down what you were never meant to carry. Enough to love somebody better than you did before. And maybe, just maybe, you'll wake up one day, like I did, and feel a little lighter. Like the past finally loosened its grip, and the future don't scare you so much anymore. I'll leave you with this. Do you believe love always comes back around, even when it's taken the long way home? Because some nights, sitting here with the stars blinking through the screen door, I swear I feel her with me. Lillian, Mama, just out of sight. And sometimes, just sometimes, I think she's smiling.